cross-platform mobile development, that's awesome. What we're going to spend the rest of the hour on is a pretty informal session. I want to talk about the capabilities that we have and how they merge into the digital workplace story, and we'll follow the slides as they go along. I'm going to be here for questions afterwards if you have any. So in 2012, right, 12 or 13, we really had this wave of mobile first. Anyone remember that, by the way? Is there anyone who remembers the iceberg slide? Iceberg? No? We had this iceberg slide, and it showed you the tip of the iceberg, the waterline, and then a huge landmass underneath, right? And the way we translated that story was to say the app is the tip of the iceberg, and then the whole complexity is underneath it when you're talking about enterprise mobility. And that was 2013-ish. It was a very famous slide, but obviously not famous enough because we have a bunch of people who didn't react to that. But anyways, so it was a very famous slide, and it kind of talked to the reality of what we were looking at there, because you had one-to-one integration, you had a lot of hard-coded, I don't like the word, but one-to-one handshakes where an app was doing one thing. In an enterprise sense, that was the worst possible scenario to be living in, right? Maintenance management, application lifecycle management, device management, every kind of nightmare scenario that you could imagine. And we are not that far away from that iceberg slide, and that's what is the message that I wanted to convey here. However, we've got a major transition. In those days, Windows Mobile or Windows CE was the bomb. If you had a device, you could go scan stuff. That was great, right? If you got your workflow item on the PDA and you could use a stylus to touch it, that was modern. Anyways, we're still there to some extent, but we've also got the consumer experience to deal with now. So consumer-grade enterprise data experience is becoming more and more critical, and not only in the industries, but also across the digital space where an employee lives today. So what do we do to bridge this gap and try and get less of the complexity troubling us on a day-to-day basis as an enterprise, not as someone giving us the weather service? We could do that too, but on an enterprise level, right? That is why this is the slide, which was the reason why I said how many people are using mobile services today. And the ones who are using mobile services today, or mobile platform even to some extent, will recognize both the top line and the bunch of services underneath, right? So let me ask the audience, how many are doing native development? Native? iOS, Android, both? Yeah, both of them? Exactly. Any of you using the SDKs on the left side of the screen? Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. So what we did was, when the market was moving, for a while there was this write once, run anywhere paradigm, which is very, very popular, with frameworks like Cordova and similar that were the craze. And then for a different period of time, the metadata-driven applications were also in flow. And then for a while, we had these native applications, native development, which was in the limelight. Because we are talking about cross-platform development, I wanted to start with native, because generally cross-platform, when you talk about cross-platform, people are thinking, I want to write it once and everything should work everywhere. But I think the reality is not just like this. It could be cross-platform means I want to be native but cross-platform, like this gentleman here who raised told me you were doing both platforms. And in the as native SDKs, we have tight integration to services delivered from the platform. We've got tight integration to our design language, which is the Fiori design language. So controls directly out of the development environment. And we also do significant lift and shift on behalf of the developers in terms of authentication and security, SSO mechanisms, etc., which are perhaps not what a developer really wants to spend their time on if they're writing native code. Do you recognize any of this? Does it resonate with you, or you think it's okay? So that's the native part. So let's jump to the right-hand side of this top half with the Capsule SDK or the Elder SDK. Is there anyone in the room using Capsule SDK as yet? Yep. Excellent. So then you guys recognize the story when we say for a while it was cross-platform with containerized applications. You could deploy your Fiori Launchpad into this Fiori client, for example, or build even native. We also have native SDKs within the Capsule SDK, so perhaps a Windows application or what have you. That was also a reality. The containerized applications are still supported. We can still use the plugins. We have a bunch of plugins there. Mobile cards, wallet-style applications. Those of you who are on, well, actually both Android and iOS now implement these, but pioneered very early on by the iOS completeness of offering. Very small, targeted applications, micro applications to do one thing and do one thing well. You get information, you are in with mobile cards, we have actions that we've enabled. We've got some kind of ability to interact with the recipient of this action with small comments in there, but also offline capabilities. When we've got this information that people need there and then, sometimes the recipients of this information would not have the ability to receive this data. They might be on a plane, they might be on a train, they might be in a truck, on a, I don't know, in a delivery route. And here you have mobile cards which also allow you to deliver offline data to them. And finally, the metadata, reincarnation of the metadata-driven style of app development, which is Mobile Development Kit. Anyone heard of Mobile Development Kit? MDK client? Oh, the same guys again. Excellent. So the two guys who said Cordova, Capsule also raised their hand for the metadata-driven applications because they kind of complement each other in feature functionality, perhaps. But in the case of the Mobile Development Kit and the client that comes with it, we are much more closer to the native experience. Do you agree? You think that stands true? Exactly. From a backend perspective, so all this is fine, but what do we have in terms of, enabling data getting to the devices? Personally, I love to talk about the column where it says enterprise authentication at the top. I don't know about the audience, but this authentication business, especially, or SSO, let's say SSO, especially in these days of hybrid landscapes and moving to the cloud in its entirety, is a major, major topic. And you only need to look at Capital One, or who was the other one? Equifax, was it Equifax who did a small boo-boo the other day, lost about 5 million records or something like this? And you don't want to be the developer who made that happen, right? So ideally, there are these standards and patterns that are implemented, and then you as a developer simply do the boring stuff or reuse the boring stuff and also shift the blame away from you. Multi-factor, the managers love multi-factor, right? Username and password? No. I want a SMS. Of course, NIST, the US standards agency, has told us SMS and email broken for like 15 years, but we're still saying, okay, let's do multi. We can do it. Right? The point is, these are features that are straight out of the box for you if you're using our platform, and no matter what style you choose to use. That's the message. One of the things I also like about our platform is this. So for metadata-driven applications, or MDK, when you have a change to your application, right? Those of you who said yes and you have an app out there or using apps, what happens when you have a change to your application or application data? Well, you have to go deploy this to your app store, and then you have to do like a circle, right? 2-4 week lead time, they approve it or reject it and so on. App updates are a brilliant way of handling this, and we can do app updates. So as an administrator or a developer, you change the application because the business need is in there, and boom, your users immediately get a push notification saying, hey, I'd like to give you an update, please accept. There are also other wonderful things with our platform. But so here are some of the pros and cons that we talked about, right? Is there anything I missed? Let's see. simple wallet style. Oh yes, let's talk about the skills, right? Because when you go down the path of choosing a platform, you also make a significant decision in choosing one or the other skill. Our standpoint is, no matter whether you want your users to be, what kind of users and what kind of use cases you have, we don't want to be the ones telling you need this skill or that skill. We will support whatever skills you have. That's the idea, which I like. No coding, okay, little bit of a statement there. For metadata-driven applications, I also want to mention one thing. As opposed to the containerized applications, the metadata applications that we provide and you can use with low effort are all very close to native experience. Very close to native experience. Has anyone used SAP Asset Manager here? Asset Manager? No? It's a heavyweight application. Traditionally, you would find it on clunky, devices. They're ruggedized. They're out there in the field. It's probably an engineer on an oil platform or in a railway station or those kind of places. Typically, they need maps integration. They need validation, data validation rules, and they need features which might be, barcoding. So they need a laser scanner. Or access to a camera, immediate access to a camera, not wait for 5 minutes before the camera starts up. Exactly these kind of features are what are the advantage of our metadata-driven applications, but also called MDK. Capabilities, we talked about it. What I didn't mention was the development environment. So normally, when you talk about skill sets, it's coding languages or what have you, but you also have a learning curve of where you're using this, right? We all know if you try to develop an iOS application, you must have Xcode, for example, and then you must know this or that language. Here we have a web-based environment, so we are generally moving towards that, and also support. In the roadmap session I talk about this. We're also quickly now moving towards supporting Visual Studio Code. There's some flexibility there, but you have an editor. The editor generally allows you to do layout and controls-based development. That was the asset manager I talked about, really, and a good example if you want to do some kind of metadata-driven applications development. The mobile cards falls under micro apps category, so very small applications, targeted data. Here's, oh yes, we've got some charts and numbers on the screen, but one thing, let's be clear about the Apple Watches there. There was a gentleman who asked me, oh, so I can deploy this and it's straight on my Apple Watch? No, it's not. So what it is notification driven and not to be confused with the app on the watch itself. If you're using Fiori, the Launchpad, there's a great integration between our cards and the Fiori Launchpad. So if you go have a look at your profile button on the top right corner, I think you then get an icon if this is enabled to push to a card. Benefits and capabilities, yeah. Oh, one thing I did not say anything about was these cards, right? So typically, when we're talking about enterprise-grade applications, we are almost always caught out by the fact that we have a heterogeneous landscape, even though people don't like to talk about it, different data sources. And even within SAP, we have a bunch of modules and components. And with these cards, we're pulling data from, or have the capability of pulling data from most of your critical backends. So your success factors for your HR staff, your field glass or what have you. So yeah, exactly. Concur. Anyone using Concur here? Yeah, exactly. Would you like to have a card from Concur straight on your iOS device or your Android device? I think that's a really strong, use case. And of course, from this the backend. So it's not just these silos or these components, but also your backend. How does this tie into digital workplace? So you might have attended the digital workplace or business workplace session earlier this week, and coming back, what I started the session at the beginning with, there was a hype for a while, right? Mobile first or cloud first or what have you first. But now our customers are, and perhaps your customers, are simply saying, we expect all this to be there. And the message that we are sending out is, well, our offering is homogeneous. So whether you want your users to go down the path of business workplace with desktop user experience, or whether you want them to go down the path of a mobile experience, there are tooling, applications, and platform available to bring the digital workplace and the business workplace straight to your enterprise. And so that's the end of my slides. But if there are questions, this is the time. So this is a wonderful question. For the benefit of the people back there, what is the future of the Capsule SDK and the Fiori client? The future is unknown. Okay. No, so I made a joke, but let me come back to the serious stuff. The reason I say that is because what we see general as a trend in the providers of the dependencies that one has as a consumer of containerized applications is that you need to have the goodwill of the platforms that you're running on. What this means is if your browser-based interaction with the device platform is hindered in one or another manner, your apps capabilities are going to be hindered. And that is a pretty major dependency to have. And when there is uncertainty around the willingness to support this type of integration, there is cause for concern. But we have the Capsule SDK out there. It is on the price list, or not on the price list, it's for free, but it's a product, it's there, it's supported. But you know, with a lot of the stuff that we can do on containerized applications, you can also do with MDK client. Because, so let me delve a little bit into his question because it's relevant and a lot of people have been asking this. So the way we do this is plugin based, right? But now we have browsers which already can do all the stuff that the plugins were supposed to do. Right? You guys with the Capsule SDK are nodding up there. So you wanted a camera, you had a plugin for a camera. You wanted a barcode scanner, you had a plugin for that. What other plugins? File storage, you had a plugin for that. But now we have browser capabilities which allow you to do this. So then maybe the question should be, why should we go down a heavyweight path rather than just not go to the browser? I'm speculating. It's not a statement on the direction of. Any other questions? No, I mean, if there are no other questions, then, well, thank you very much for coming. Yeah, and all the best. Thank you.